Hey guys, Brian here, and welcome back to Direct Admission. And in today's episode, we have my brother, my actual brother, here on the show. He's a nurse educator. He goes into everything nurse education. He talks about the salary difference between that and the NP, the trials and tribulations of becoming a nurse educator, uh, talking about working as one in a big medical center as well as a faculty in a huge university. And it's just a really good conversation between two brothers that are nurses and that just are pretty passionate about it. So if you want to hear more about it, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And here we go. So, guys, we have my brother, Ben Cerezo, up in this business. And, guys, he's a nurse educator, and we're going to go into how we got into that because we haven't had an educator here on the channel. And it just so happens to be my brother. So, Ben, how did you get into nursing and what do you do now? Like, give us a little bit of about you.
Pretty sure our parents encouraged us. But it was very logical, and I think they knew what our strengths are, right? They knew that we're really smart, we're caring, it fits. So our parents were always talking about it when we were younger, and I actually remember in high school, there were these nurses that came to our high school, and there was like an overhead announcement saying like, hey, if you're interested in nursing, come by like the not the principal's
The
office, but
nurse's office.
yeah, I think the nurse's office, yeah. So I went, and I got to talk to these two guys who were nurses. So I was like really surprised. I was expecting like, you know,
Typical female nurse.
all right. So I was like really cool. It's like, oh, cool. Like, male nurse is awesome. And they were talking about it. Everything that they were saying, I was picking up, and I got a really cool gift card too. They're like, oh, thanks for coming. Here's a gift card to Spencer's or something like that. I don't know if you guys are old enough to know what Spencer's is, but yeah, they gave me like a gift card, and I was like, cool. And it just kind of built from there. So just like you, because I watched your other videos, I applied directly to nursing school, which I think is the best way to do
I
it.
don't even think they'd allow that anymore, to be honest.
They don't? That's
I
horrible.
don't think that's a thing.
I feel like that was such a good strategy because, I feel like our stock, our potential was like our resume was really, really high, like straight out of high school.
Straight out of high school, yeah.
Like honor roll, all this stuff, right? We look really good on paper. So, we applied and we got in, and we were set straight at freshman year in college. Like we're already in the nursing school. We didn't have to worry about all that stuff.
Yeah.
Because I saw some friends who were like, oh shit, Ben, you're in nursing school? That's a really good idea. I want to apply too. And they're like in like sophomore year in college, and it was a battle, man.
And it's hard to get in. It got really competitive, and then people can't get in because you need to be like the top of, I guess, whatever minor you were doing at the time, or major, like for science or whatever. Like, yeah, that is that's a tough thing because I know like a lot of our friends didn't get directly into nursing school.
So I think that was a really good strategy, and I really didn't know it at the time, but it was awesome, and I enjoyed my time, and I went to Bang at the dental school, and once I got into my my job, my first job was in upstate New York, right? Yeah, you forgot about it, right?
Totally forgot that you're up there. Yeah.
And I remember like I graduated, I passed my NCLEX. I was so thankful I passed my NCLEX. I actually remember like falling to my knees and saying, thank God I passed. Then being able to sleep for like the next 3 days straight. But then what was it like? Literally like after those 3 days, Dad was like, we gotta find you a job. So he like just dragged me to every local hospital in our hometown. It was like, can we get it up? Here's my son's resume. And we went all the way up to like Woodbury, and we went to that hospital there, and they were like, oh yeah, we have a job, and that's kind of like how I got my first job. Like not like
Not
applying
the
on
typical online applying.
just like
That,
straight
that
up
that's the way how old school people did it. You would like go into the hospitals and ask for jobs. But then again, like what year was that?
2009.
2010? 9, yeah. So that was so you've been a nurse a long time. 15 years, 16 years?
15, 14, I think. So let's say 2010. So like 14, 15 years. Yeah. 14, 15 years.
And then what kind of floors were you working on?
Let's see. So in the Woodbury Commons, that floor was a med surg floor.
Hmm.
It was a really small hospital, bro. I don't think people understand the benefit of going to a big medical center rather than working at a small hospital, because when you're working nights
Yeah.
and there's no doctors around actually in the hospital itself, it's kind of scary when your patients are crashing, because in small hospitals, it's only attendings running the show. And
Yeah.
attendings are not going to stay, in the hospital at night. You have to call them at like 3 o'clock in the morning when your patient's having a fever and they need Tylenol, even for small things like that. So imagine if it's like a big
Hmm.
thing, they're not physically there to really like, you know, to help you when things are going crazy. So, another job in like a big medical center, because there they have like a medical school, they have interns, residents 24/7 around you. You just feel like really safe, like you
Yeah.
can do what you need to do as a nurse because you have that doctor to really support you. So
Yep,
yeah.
that's true. And then how long did when you transferred to the medical center, where you both work, how long did you stay as a staff nurse? And you transferred to a few places before you got your master's. So let's go into that.
Oh yeah. So 8 months at that Woodbury hospital, and then 4 years in med surg in a medical center in New York City. And then
Hmm.
after med surg, 4 years, I moved to the ER OBS unit for another 4 years. And then after
Hmm.
that, I I applied for the nurse educator job, and I got it. I've been doing that for like the last 4 years.
Nice. And then since our medical center actually pays for you to go back to school, I believe now it's like 100%. But of course, you have to do some sort of time to pay it back. I guess that's like the contract or whatever. Like you do 4 years of school, that means you have to do an extra year on top to pay back your tuition. So you got your master's at Ramapo College, which is another place where I interviewed one of my friends, Jeff.
Oh
He's
yeah,
one of the other nurses that did his bachelorette there.
sure.
And then
Great school.
you got into uh, your master's in education. Why did you choose that route instead of like nurse practitioner or informatics or going the ICU route and going CRNA?
Like coming out of school, I was like thinking of all those things, all those three options, like four
Mhm,
options actually: educator, NP, CRNA, or informatics, right?
mhm,
So I was like, I don't know which one I'm like gonna really be good at, and I was like, I don't know. And then one day, I was it was in that big medical center now in New York City. I was a year and a half in, and then my manager was like, I'm going to precept. I was like, me? You want me to precept? Only a year and a half. Like, look at this nurse, this senior nurse, that senior nurse. They have so many more years of experience. Like, why are you asking me to precept? She's like, I don't know. I just think you're being really good at it. I was like, that's really vague. But
But thank you. I think okay.
thanks for the vote of confidence. But no, she was like, no, I think you're going to be really good at it. I think you should give it a try. And as a night nurse, precepting is only for 2 weeks, so it's a good like kind of trial run.
Yeah.
And I did it. I remember my first orientee, and she was so sweet. And I just really remember loving teaching. Right?
Hmm.
I was kind of dreading precepting. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be good at it. But once I was in it, I was like, damn, I really like this. I like showing like her how to survive on the unit, how to
Hmm.
approach a sick patient, how to like, move things along, how to critically think. And I was like, damn, I like this. And then like the other senior nurse was like, damn, man, you're kind of enjoying this, aren't you? It's like, yeah, it's pretty awesome. And then they kept on giving me more orientees, and I just kept on falling in love with it. So like, hey, like I guess nurse educator is like the right way to go, since I like pre.
Hmm.
So that's how I got into it.
and then you graduated with your master's in education, and then so I guess a lot of people would then question, why did you decide to stick with like the education in the hospital, like being the nurse educator for the floors in the hospital versus going the like being a college professor type of educator? Because
That's a really good question. Like before I got my educator job in the big medical center, I was educator for like a college, a university. So a big university, a big nursing school in the city. I was like a clinical instructor, and I did simulation instructor as well. And I liked it. That was really cool, especially the sim because you have to make it as realistic as possible.
yeah,
But it's really cool because you can make it as crazy as possible because it's a safe place for them to learn. So it's really cool.
this guy has testicular torsion, but his heart rate is 200. What do you treat first? His balls. That's
Or like
the reason.
or make it like really light, and then you can maybe like, oh, they're just complaining of cough, and then they're coding. What do you do now? Um, it's like I made it exciting, but it was cool. I loved it. I could definitely see myself doing that sometime in my career, but I really love like the medical center that I work at, and I saw the opportunity. I remember working with my educators when I was on the unit. I loved it when they were always there, like to basically like save me during those critical times. I remember I was on nights, had a code real early in the shift, and suddenly, the OG educator came by, and he was like, "I got this," and he was doing the med nurse for the code cart. He was just like so methodical with it, right? I was like, "Damn, he's so cool. I want to be like that." I wanted to do the same for the new nurses coming to that medical center. So that was always like something I wanted to do to kind of give back in a way,
Yeah. So for the educator portion, what do you look for like a new nurse that you feel is going to be successful on whatever unit you're bringing them onto?
Oh, that's a good question. I actually kind of like to set those expectations real early. I used to be a super nice educator and be like, "Oh, everything's gonna be fine," blah blah blah. But I realized you have to set expectations early with your orientees so they know what to expect. So the first thing I always like to say to them is, you have to be like open to guidance. It doesn't matter if your preceptor has been there for 20 years or even just a year. Like they have more experience than you do right now. So the big thing that you need to know is that they have something to offer you, no matter how much experience that they have. So be a sponge, absorb as much as you can, absorb as much wisdom as you can from your preceptor because they want to show you the way. Let them show you the way. That was like my number one thing.
And that's like, I want to get into that because obviously I precept, I'm a charge nurse, and we see a lot of nurses come and go. And probably the hardest part is vetting out a nurse that hopefully meshes well with the unit that you work on, or their personality, sometimes even the personality, if they will even mesh with the other nurses.
Yeah.
Like, and then there's also like the factor of like, I don't know if I'm generalizing, but I might be like a boomer in this stage of my nursing career where I do feel that the work ethic for some of the new nurses is not the same as our generation of nurses. Do you have thoughts on that?
I think it's hard. I feel like I'm sure
So like judging off your expertise, because you're the person that gets to see, like, not criticize, but see how these nurses are going along in their orientation. And like, so it's like the thought process for me is, because I failed orientees before just as a preceptor, just because I felt they weren't learning at the pace that I believe is needed for the proper care of the unit that I work on.
Sure.
So it's like, since you see people at these stages from where you get to actually, like, I don't want to say judge either. I don't know why I'm having like a brain fart, but
yes.
how do you assess nurses? Because obviously, like
Yeah.
the whole nursing shortage, you need more bodies, but it's hard to get the right ones. Like, you know what I mean?
It is, especially like the past few years because of COVID.
Hmm.
So, I feel like, a lot of the nurses that are coming out of nursing school right now, they're at a really big disadvantage because of COVID, their clinicals weren't in hospitals. They weren't in like nursing homes. Like they weren't able to learn like hands on with a patient right in front of them. It was all based on like simulation, which I love, but there's some things that you can't really simulate.
Yeah.
So, they're very book smart, very sharp, but the transition from books to actually applying it to a real person, it was a bigger gap with these the
Hmm.
recent classes because of COVID, because they couldn't attend clinicals in hospitals. So initially I was like, oh, why are they having such a hard transition? I didn't quite understand. But then once they started to express to me like, oh, like, in nursing school because of COVID, we weren't able to do this and this and this. I was like, oh, okay, so I need to adjust. How am I
Hmm.
going to give them the experiences that they need so they could help transition? So I had to like start making more classes to help them apply these this knowledge that they have. It's all in here, but how can I get them to apply it to an actual person that's right in front of them? It was
And
it was really harder, yeah,
and
for
do you
them.
think that's like still a problem with new nurses, even though COVID's like technically done? Because obviously when we were in school, we had more hands-on clinical experience, hands-on skills, whereas I talked to us a few like kind of more recent grads, even if it's within the last like 3 to 5 years, they like even Q when he was on here, he said they didn't have a lot of like hands-on skills. Everything that he learned how to do was on the job, which is
Yeah,
kind of scary, but I get it.
yeah.
Like is that just a big problem with nursing schools, you think, right now? Is just like a factory to just pump out degrees?
I think so. I mean, I understand also the limitations of like a nursing school, because like I work for one, right? But you can only do so much. I think it was just a bad situation with COVID, and that
Hmm.
I don't know how to word this. It's more than just the nursing students not having the clinical experiences and then them struggling to transition to the hospital. It's more than that because of COVID. It affected everything, not
Hmm.
just but the hospital itself. Because I remember like when we were orienting on the floor, we were surrounded by
Yeah.
senior nurses. Like 90% of our floor was probably like senior nurses or 80%, right? So there was always like some wise person to kind of guide us and show us,
Yeah. A go-to. That wasn't your preceptor.
exactly. But now, because of COVID, a lot of those senior people have left and retired. And I think this is the problem for most hospitals is that a lot of your preceptors now are kind of like how I was when I was new, but they're like the primary. They're like just 2 years in,
Like super new, yeah.
like super young. And, they're trying their best and I could see it. I really appreciate that. I appreciate all my preceptors, but, it's tough. And on top of that, it's not only that they're these young nurses are going to have to precept at such a young age, but because of COVID and because of all the open open positions, they're precepting like boom boom one
Hmm.
after
Yep.
another after another, just to kind of fill these spaces. Because I remember when we were precepting, you're still precepting, but like there would be like gaps, like
Huge
months,
gaps, yeah.
that you could like take a break, because precepting it takes a lot out of you. It requires so much focus to make sure that this nurse is progressing in the right direction and they're learning all that they need to know to take care of their patients safely.
Yeah.
That so that's another perspective I want to share.
Yeah. That's a huge one too. And so like the transition from being a staff nurse to an educator hard for you?
Oh, totally, bro. I feel so bad for the first few units that had me. So if you're out there and you're watching this, I apologize for not being the best educator at that time. And I just want to say that I appreciate all of you for being so patient with me because that transition was super hard. Like, uh,
Hmm.
like I couldn't help it. Like when I was on my new units, and he would say like, "Oh, I can't get the labs," and I would be like, "Oh, okay, I'll help you. I'll
Oh, so
go in."
you end up doing it for them?
I would want to do it, and I did a few times. Like I would go into one of my units and put the IV in or draw the labs because I felt like that's how I can help, and that's how I was helping when I was like a charge nurse or a preceptor, things like that, right?
Uh-huh.
But then I realized that when I commit myself to those items, it consumes time, and I can't see the bigger picture of how I can educate and support my staff. I can't provide the classes that they need. I can't meet with my orientees, for example, who are the most important. So it was a really hard transition. It was really tough. Um, and think of it also like as a preceptor, you're just focusing on one
One.
person. As an educator, at the height of COVID, I had to train and guide like a max of 30 to 40 new orientees. Like I'm
Mhm.
not on the floor with them, their preceptors are, but I still have to keep track of them and make sure that they're
Yeah.
making progress. That's a whole different ball game. Very different.
And so since you just went into your role as educator and
Sure.
your responsibilities, so there is always going to be an argument regarding, I guess, compensation if you wanted to go into it, if we wanted to go into it. So I know a lot of NPs get frustrated or mad or jealous that the nurse educator, another master's prepared nurse just like them, gets paid the exact same without the I guess patient load, but your responsibility of assessing and making sure 40 orientees are not killing somebody and staying towards protocol um is a whole different animal. Like, I'm not sure it's warranted, the hate, but I could see the thought process, but, like, I just wanna know your thoughts on that, because I know a lot of people think about going to their masters and they think, like, "I should go NP because it's a way to make more money," which is, I guess, for the most part, true if you do to an extent, but if you're both working the 40 hours a week at the medical center that we work at, you're making the exact same dollar.
Yeah, I mean, when I chose being a nurse educator, I honestly didn't know that the pay was the same as an NP. That was just like a pleasant surprise. After I graduated, I was like, oh snap, really? I'll do this for less. But
I would do this for less.
but of course, I'm very happy with what I'm getting right now. But yeah, because like we saw how our NPs work. I was like, wow,
Yeah.
they're really smart. They're working so hard, and they have to carry this responsibility, right? And I
Mhm.
was like, wow, like they're basically doctors, right? They have a lot of responsibility, and what they get in pay is they definitely deserve. And um, and when I became an educator, I was like, and I got to go through it and really feel the weight of the assignment. I was like, man, this is really challenging too. It's very, very challenging because it's, again, the amount of orientees that you have, the responsibility that you have to ensure that each of them is
Mhm.
making progress and that they're going to do the right thing and care for that patient the right way and make sure that they're safe. That is a huge responsibility.
Mhm.
And if for example an orientee were to not progress well and I give them the okay to pass, there would be a lot of questions about why did this orientee pass, and they would always
Yeah.
look at me first. So that's a big responsibility. So
Yeah.
I understand why our medical center, the understanding it's like it's very equal pay.
So you understand, like, so that pretty much you're saying that different role, but very needed role. That's why you believe educators are getting paid very well.
Yeah, like I understand why their pay is what it is because now that I've gone through it for these past 4 years, I'm like, the amount of responsibility that you have to train these people, the volume of orientees that you have,
Yeah.
and it's all like in the background, right? It's something that
Mhm.
is not really seen. And I feel like that's why a lot of people don't understand, and that's why there's a lot of questions like, oh, why are educators paid the same as MPs? It's because it's a lot of stuff in the background. It's very, very tough. And um, I just want to, like, shout out to my educators. Like, I feel you. I know it's like really hard work, and we've been going through a lot of hard stuff because of COVID. And
And like I understand it too. I see the educator that works with us in the EP Cath Lab. There is, and that's only 2 units, but it's like a lot of specialized skills and obviously critical care that we go over a lot of stuff. And of course, when like DOH comes around, magnet, all these other things, it's like endless what's it called, in services and modules and everything like that, and keeping on top of everyone with that. And yeah, like you don't have the patient responsibility, but you have like the nurse responsibility. And I don't know if you have it for your floors too, but then you also have like the PCAs, the techs, everything like that you also have to be on top of with regarding their roles and responsibilities and protocols. And I guess for us, it's called peak modules and all that.
yeah,
So it's not just the nurses that you're looking after.
no. Like, I think that's, yeah. Let me get into that. Like, it's more than just teaching the nurses and doing in services. That's what I thought initially that educator was. I was like, oh, that's a really cool gig. I want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's more than just training the nurses. You're training the PCAs, the nursing assistants, and let's say there's a new type of staff member that's being developed, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to start training them too. In our medical center, there's a new staff member called like the mobility nursing assistant. So that is a new staff member. Since it's brand new, as an educator that was attached to that project, I had to build it from the ground up.
What even is that?
Uh,
I never even heard of it. What color scrubs do they wear? Let's go with that first.
I don't really know. I want to
Are
say
they the maroon ones?
I think they're maroon or red or light blue. I want to say baby blue. And
Baby blue, that's a nurse's aides.
yeah, they're the same as they're nursing assistants also.
Okay.
But their primary focus is mobility. So to help with pressure injuries,
Okay.
these nursing assistants are matched with a physical therapist, and they work with the physical therapist. They go from patient to patient on every unit, ensuring that each of them are mobilized based on the physical therapist's assessment and the nurse's assessment. So that's why I'm involved. And it's been a really good program that has reduced pressure ulcers in our medical center.
Oh, so their role is to specifically go to each of these patients and make sure they're being turned in position and all that.
Yeah, turn in position, out of bed, things like that. Yeah, and
Yeah,
there's
I wonder. I know this isn't your expertise, but I wonder now, does that role get paid more than the PCA or the NA? Because I'm sure that would cause a lot of issues with jealousy and all that as well. Obviously, you don't probably know, but I just wonder because obviously, if it's like if they are considered NAs or PCAs, then it's just like I could see where people would get mad or try to transfer into that role if it's technically easier versus not.
From what I know, I think they get paid the same as a nursing assistant, despite
Mhm.
having that extra responsibility of working with a physical therapist. That's what I know to my knowledge, but I really don't know much about like salary and stuff like that. But yeah, that's another thing. Like, the different types of roles and different types of staff members that you have to, like, train and educate. On top of that, in services. Let me go about in services, okay? I know when I go to the floor, I give you an in service, Brian. It lasts for like 10 minutes, 5 minutes,
Yeah.
maybe, right? It
And I'll be
doesn't.
the first person to be like, this was a waste of time.
And I understand that you're busy. That's exactly how I felt with when my educator went to the floor, and I loved her. I loved her so much, but like, you're just so busy. I totally get it. But that 5 minute in service and how I presented it, giving you the key points, that doesn't take 5 minutes to make. That takes so long to make.
Mhm.
Sometimes we're given the content and we just simply have to identify the high points. And I'm like, okay, how am I going to get Brian to listen to me in this 5 minute span? I'm just going to give him the key points so that he understands, and then have him read it afterward, right? Sometimes you're lucky and the hospital gives you the content, but sometimes they don't.
Mhm.
And And for example, one of your units is like, we're going to transition to step down.
Let's
and
just do it.
and
Let's just do it.
and you need to make the content, and you're like, so you have to build it from the ground up, right? And that takes days, weeks, months
Hmm.
to develop that stuff. And that is a lot of work being put in. And it's not even just about putting things together, it's about making sure that it abides by policy and that it's safe, uh, based off research. Because the things that you're spitting out, that you're telling to your nurse, it has to make sense because they're gonna apply it to a real person. And if it
Hmm.
isn't right, then they're gonna be like, hey, Ben taught me this, that's what I did. And they're gonna like, look at you. So a lot of responsibility there when you're making content. This isn't like, doing a project in like college anymore or like high school. This is like, stuff
It's
people
actually being practiced and used on patients.
on patient. So you got to be, make sure that it's real good. And, the months that you make or the weeks that you make that content, it might just be an hour class, but that took a while to make that hour class as
Mhm.
efficient, as meaningful to the nurse as possible. Like that's a lot. Again, a lot of the back work that you don't see educators do.
Yeah, and that's huge too, because like obviously us as staff nurses, when we hear like in service or all that, we're like we just eye roll and be like, oh God, again. How come they're doing it at 7 p.m. when I'm trying to go home? Or can't they just do it in the morning? Or like
I
can she just find me on my lunch break somewhere? Like
know.
something like that. Like I get it. Like I give my educator a hard time a lot, so I'll apologize to her. I know she'll probably watch this, but I get it.
Your peak modules, huh?
Oh my god, dude. I'm pretty sure I'm due for some. I don't like last year's. I don't know. But no, I get it. It's super tough. You have a way different role than what people actually see. Like you said, developing these programs, the content that you need to actually educate your nurses and your staff correctly definitely seems to take a lot of time, and you probably don't get the praise for doing it because we hate doing these meetings. Going into more of like the nursing education, let's like backtrack to school.
Yeah.
Was the schooling hard?
It was definitely challenging. I recommend, I went to, Rampo College. I loved it. I chose it specifically because it was in person and also online. So it was like a hybrid, right?
And that was like at the beginning of hybrid type of things.
The very first. I was like super nervous. I was like, I don't know how this is gonna work. But I ended up really loving it because I didn't have to go to this physically to the school as often. I could do my work like online, like do like those discussion boards. We have meetings online, right? Um, but like if I really need to deal with like an issue and I need to talk to someone physically, I could do that. So I could just go to the school, like drive there for like and like talk
Mhm.
to an actual teacher and get this resolved. So I think that was a really um, good compromise. But honestly, if you want to do it all in person or online, that works too. If I could do it all over again, I'd do it all online just because it's just very convenient and it seems like
Mhm.
to be very effective.
And what were there? I know you guys did like anatomy and physiology and some pharmacology.
Yeah,
Um, I think you actually do the same pharmacology as NPs,
I think so.
because I remember we had the same books when I was in grad school. I was looking, I was like, oh damn, why did I buy this book? I could have just used his.
Yeah.
Um, but is there a clinical aspect to nurse educator?
Yeah, there is. It's like on your final year. I went to a local community college and I was following the educator, and she
Hmm.
was a clinical educator, and we had a clinical class of maybe like 6 students. So we like, she showed me like her style, and I learned a lot from her. I definitely learned a lot from her. What can I say about that school too? Like, I if you're thinking of becoming an educator or anything, going for your master's or whatever, I just recommend like if you're like dragging your feet, like just jump in and do it. Like once you know what you really want, and
Hmm.
just take one class at a time, and then suddenly you'll see like in like 3 years, 3.5 years, you'll have it with you, and you didn't
Hmm.
really have to sacrifice so much, right?
Yeah.
Like you just had to take one class a semester. You still have like a social life because only one class, you're working at the same time. It's a good balance, I feel. Just don't overdo it. Like, don't do too many classes to the point where like you're just not, enjoying life anymore. That's not a good.
That's true, because like I think I told you this over the phone, or I do this every year because since I've dropped out of NP school, like I could always go back, but every winter when I'm like stuck indoors and all that, I go through it through my head. I was like, should I just finish it? But then my brain always tells me no. Uh that might be, I don't know why, but I just can't see myself doing it. I'm very happy of where I work,
Oh,
but sometimes I do wish that if I was to have gone back to school, I should have went straight for the educator route, or I should have finished like the ICU experience and went CRNA. And I just wonder why I didn't do that sometimes, but I don't even know I went on this tangent. But I think it was just because we were talking about school. But
no, I think that's a good topic. A lot of people, like, another thing, like as an educator, because you spend so much time with your preceptors and your orientees, like they like to confide in you, right?
mhm,
They find you very approachable because you feel like, oh, he's one of us. So you could like,
mhm.
approach him and ask him for guidance, right? And a lot of people ask me like, oh, should I go get my master's? What should I do? And you know, before I always used to push people like, oh yeah, just go get your master's and stuff like that. But honestly, if you want to, go get it. If that's really what you want to pursue and you feel like that's your passion. If you want to like, be a clinical nurse, that's awesome too. Like there's so many ways to be like so successful as a nurse. Like you don't need to always get your master's. You could stay where you're at, love where you are, and look at you. You love where you're working at. You
I
love
do.
being an EP. I was like, if I found something like that before I even thought of going to master, I would have stayed there because I just love it.
And I think that's the thing that's crazy too, which the reason why I started school before was because when I was on the heart failure floors, I felt like that was the only way off of that floor, like I I got comfortable too quick, or not too quick, but I got comfortable where I was, but the work was backbreaking. It was hard. It was depressing at times. Um like it was just tough nursing. And I
Yep.
thought the only way to get off of being the floor nurse there and breaking my back was becoming an NNP and working as one like that. But then I transferred to EP. I was still in school, but then I did notice a lot of my coworkers that were staff nurses, a lot of them have their masters in nursing, either like a DNP in education versus NPs and all that, FNP, AGNC, or adult Jerry NPs or PEDS NPs, but they're still working as a staff nurse. And I think that might have like flipped something in my brain, being like, dang, what I'm doing right now is something that these master prepared nurses still want to do because it's actually fun. We like it. And of course, there's certain perks to the job.
Sure, of course. Like what I like to just always encourage, kind of like what you did, is like I just like always encourage my nurses, like you just gotta like pursue what your dream, what you want at the time, and it might not take you to exactly what that is. It might show you a different way, and it will like take you to this way, and like, oh, I love this, but I wouldn't have known I love this if I didn't go for this, right?
Mhm.
It's like it's a really cool journey because I remember, um, I was in Re2 and I was like, oh, I'm kind of like done with Re2. I'm tired of the emergency room. Let me try like going to like Onc, right? So I went to Onc. Didn't do well in Onc. I thought I'd be
Mhm.
awesome at Onc because I'm an experienced nurse. I could just apply that stuff real quick. But like I was struggling and you know, it was weird. When I applied for Onc, I also applied for the nurse educator job at the same time.
Mm.
And I wasn't getting any callbacks for the educator job. So okay, I'll just go to Onc. And I went to Onc, and I was just trying my best, but I just wasn't getting it. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna admit that I'm not good at this, and it's okay. I talked to my wife, and she was like, "It's okay. I understand. I could see that. You're really unhappy. I know you want to go back to the ER. So go back to the ER and shine there because you're really good at it there. You
Mm-hmm.
love that stuff, so go. So I was like, definitely. So I told my manager at Onk that I'm going to resign. I'm going to transfer back to ER, and I did. And I was talking to my ER manager, and we're making my schedule, right? And suddenly HR calls me and says like, "Hey, do you want that educator job?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll totally want that educator job." So it's like the path to your dream job, which has always been educator for me, it might not be always be direct. It could be like weird. So just go through your weird path, and you'll find your way eventually. You just gotta walk it.
And I love how you went into that because I've had a lot of coworkers come and go, right? And then a few of them do come back to say the EP lab and a few don't. But
Yeah.
then I do like message with them every now and then, checking in, and like they may even like hate the new job that they're at, but the thought process or the thought of people judging them for coming back is one of those things as well. Or they don't want to admit that the grass wasn't greener um in the next spot, you know?
Yeah.
So you saying and being able to like think about it yourself and being like, damn, this is not the right spot for me. And for you to understand that and also be like, it's okay if I failed out of this, because that's the beauty of nursing, that you you didn't specialize in onc, but you wanted to try it. And if you did like it, you could have. But since you knew you were like dope in the ER, you're like, let me just go back to that and see where I could go from there again and wait for the educator job, which ended up happening. And like, I feel like that's a big thing that a lot of nurses, new nurses, experienced nurses, if like they're thinking about changing, um, why not? You know, especially if it's within the same health system. Most places have that kind of support system that you could try something, and if you aren't fitting or if it isn't working,
Yeah.
don't be afraid to go back to the unit that you're comfortable on, and then you could just find the next job again later if it
Exactly.
happens again, you know?
Exactly. I want to normalize that. I really want to normalize that. You know, go try, go for what you want. If it doesn't work out, okay, whatever. Just keep on searching, keep on going. You could go back to where you came from and then like regroup and then try again. There's no harm in shooting your shot. There's no harm in like trying. Like just do what you got to do and don't feel bad if it doesn't work out because you are awesome. Just know that you're awesome. Know that you're still great. You're a great nurse. You just got to find the right place for it where you fit.
That's
Yeah.
super true. So, you being an educator, I could easily see that you're passionate about what you do. How does a nurse of 14 years, I'm a nurse of like 12 years, how do you keep a passion for it when you see so many people get burnt out?
Um, that's a really good question. Because I definitely experienced a time when I was an educator when I was like burnt out, right? Really burnt
Mm,
out. And I was just like, man, I just want to give up. Um, I think you just have to like, be honest with yourself. Just, take a break, like, make time for yourself. Don't be so so eager to say yes to every initiative or project that's kind of thrown your way.
mhm.
You know, you want to help your orientees and your preceptors and your managers and your units, but help them, but also remember to not over give yourself away. Like you have to set these boundaries and barriers to kind of just keep yourself, have some of yourself for yourself. I'm not
Hmm.
wording it correctly.
No,
Um,
that makes a lot of sense. Have some of yourself for yourself, because in the video that I just released with Tyron today, the urban nurse, he
yeah,
was talking about how you have your family, you have
yeah,
everything. You're giving, it seems like you're giving everyone just 25%, but when you're at work, you're giving them 100%,
yeah.
and you're not giving yourself any time. So that fit perfectly, saying you're not giving yourself anything. And if when you do that, you kind of like take your soul out of your work, out of your life, and everything seems pointless at some point. And I feel like that's where the burnout probably comes from.
Yeah, definitely. Like that's definitely where the burnout comes from. Like, you have to, be like, hey, I'm giving way too much of myself right now, and I have to stop it. I have to stop it. I want to give as much as I can to my orientees and my preceptors because I care about them so much. I want them all to succeed, not because it's my job, just because I really care about them legitimately, right? I want
Mhm.
them to succeed. But there's a point where you have to like take a step back, take a break, and be like, hey, I can't because I have a daughter at home, I have a wife at home, I have myself too. Like you need to balance it all, because if you don't balance it, you're gonna find yourself being very miserable. um and it's hard because I feel like as nurses we naturally always want to give,
Yeah.
just be really nice and
And we
kind.
live in the miserable. Like we somehow normalized
Yeah,
being okay with being miserable.
I remember I remember precepting one of my orientees, and it was a crazy day. Like we had a patient that coded right at the start of our shift. This was happening, that was happening, RT was happening. Like it was burning. The floor was burning, and I could see that she was like, "What do we do?" And I was like, "We have to learn how to dance.
We have to learn how to dance.
We have to learn how to dance in the fire. We need to learn how to dance in the rain. This is like one of the skills. This is the most important skill I'm going to teach you. When everything is like falling around you, you know that meme, right?
Yeah.
You just have to say it's okay, and we can feel
It's a-
it. And that's how you survive nursing. And not every day is like that, but when those days happen, you need to whip that out of your utility belt and be like, okay, this is what I have to use today. Learn how to dance in fire day, and just oh my god, you know what I'm
no,
talking. Every
no,
nurse.
that's true because I was just precepting my friend Eric, who was also on the show as well, and we had like a very tough, challenging, busy day, and then like I see him struggling, and I'm just like they're kind of like laughing, and he's like, "Why are you laughing?" I'm like, "Welcome." I was like, "This is what it is. Like usually it is fun. If I'm working with you and we're cool, we're gonna have fun. We're also gonna do a lot of we're gonna laugh a lot, but we're also gonna do a lot of work."
Yeah,
And I was like, and then he was like, "But this was crazy." I was like, "Yeah, but look, we're done and
yeah.
let's go get food." And then he's like, "Oh." I was like, "Yeah, we're done at 7. Not a lot of people are. Not a lot of nurses are done at 7 or by 7:30." I was like,
That's
"Let
true.
it be known you got a evening nurse coverage.
Yeah,
We did our work. Whatever we couldn't do, we were handed off. That was handed off, and let's go home." You know? And then
exactly.
he's like, "And what do you do?" I was like, "Our job is done as long as you documented, you gave proper handoff. Your responsibility is done once you walk off the unit, you know?"
Exactly. And that's something that I'm glad that you're teaching your orientee, because that's so important, like to let it go. Because you have to
Mhm.
let it go. Like a lot of my orientees, they keep it with them even after they have report, and they take it with them home and like, oh my God, like that patient coded. Did I do something wrong? Like blah blah blah. They're analyzing everything. I'm like, I'm glad that you like to think about it later on to learn,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
do that for a small amount of time and then just end it and go and hang out, like, with your husband, your wife, your family, whoever. Like just end
Yeah.
it.
Just know you did your best and you could dwell on it for like an hour,
Yeah,
but that's it.
set a limit. Set a
Like
limit.
that is it. Like set a limit and that is it because you'll just eat away at yourself and that is just the worst thing you could do.
Yeah.
But we are going on an hour. If anyone wanted to become an educator just like you, what kind of tips would you give them?
Tips are, if you really want to try and see if you would be into being an educator, I really recommend like being a preceptor. Start off being first as a secondary preceptor, kind of just filling in, and then be that primary preceptor that's, training them from week 1 all the way to the end at week 12 or whatever it is, because that's a whole different ball game from 1 to 12, rather than being the secondary or just like kind of catching up at the end and just kind of like refining everything. I recommend, getting your master's in nursing education, and once you get that, build your resume up by being a clinical instructor, or being a simulation instructor, and those are really like jobs you could get like pretty quickly. And then from there, you should be able to become an educator right after that, because your resume is built. You've been a preceptor. You understand how to teach someone. So now you just have to now apply those things that you learned to a larger scale. So yeah.
And if anyone wanted to contact you regarding all of this, how would they be able to contact you?
That's a good question. I'll give you my IG, I guess, and they could message me on my IG. Yeah, that's fine. I have an IG educator. I don't even know what it is.
I'll find it and I'll put it on in the description. But regarding that, as an educator, I feel with the information and knowledge that you have, you should take advantage of social media and educating, because I feel like I've seen a lot of educator type posts that they're good, but me not just being your brother, but seeing your knowledge, I feel like you could probably teach someone in a way easier way, like simplifying. I feel like that's what's needed, and I feel like you could do really well at that. So it just obviously it takes time, but I feel like that's something that you should look into if that was your thoughts ever to do. So again, I appreciate you for hanging out with me and taking time out of your busy schedule, because I know you switched to night shift. So again, hopefully we could do this again sooner with a better time frame, and maybe even get other people on here as like a panel where we could talk about everything.
Oh yeah, that'd be fun.
And thanks again for hanging out with me, Ben.
Yeah, no doubt, of course. Anytime, brew.
All right, man. Love you, bro. And I will see you maybe at work. Well, I'll see you this weekend.
All right. Yeah, Super Bowl. Go Chiefs.
No, bro. I want them both to lose.
I just said that because